This has Padres fans absolutely fired up. This has me fired up. This should have you fired up. The San Diego Padres have one of the best bullpens in the entire major leagues and show no signs of slowing down. Let's talk about the implications of what that means for the Friars this season, what that means for you as a Padres fan, and what that means in terms of their chances of being world champions at last this season. What's going on, everybody? I am Christian Pedersen. Welcome back to another episode of Padres Digest. Before we get to everything going on with the bullpen, I got to do the obligatory thing. We are a new channel, and we appreciate everybody that is tuning in. But as a new channel, we sort of have to do the YouTube song and dance. Can you please hit the subscribe button? It would really help me in terms of growing the podcast on the back end, but it also helps you guys in terms of putting good Padres vibes out into the universe, vibes that translate into one of the best bullpens in baseball, being the San Diego Padres. Let me show you the rankings that I'm talking about. This is all National League teams, yes, but that's also just the best four in baseball right there. The Padres are number 2 behind the New York Mets, with the San Francisco Giants and the Los Angeles Dodgers rounding it out at 3 and 4. And I think that you could probably say, 1 through 5, if I'm being completely objective, and I try not to be too objective. This is a Padres reactionary network. You have other places for raw statistical information. We try to interpolate and extrapolate on this. You could make a case, probably anybody in this could be the best bullpen in baseball. The sample size is not infinite right now, so some of these numbers are still perhaps a little tilted. But to me, you look at this and it's just like, whoa. Is the unfortunate reality that the San Diego Padres are in the NL West, and it would appear that having the best bullpen in baseball is just keeping up with the Joneses. I did say that we would talk about the implications of the World Series and winning in advance, like the ultimate. We are not a team that is just like, let's get better this year, let's rebuild. Padres are in a peak mindset right now. So Padres, if the judgment is let's make it to the World Series, would seem to be just in the tread water category, because the other biggest competition that they have, mainly in the Los Angeles Dodgers, but apparently also in the rejuvenated San Francisco Giants. And obviously you'd have to play the Mets, but potentially the Mets or Phillies are going to come out of the East. And you look at that and it's like, okay, that's really tough. The Padres are going to have to get by any of those teams. It's not like there's one or two up here where you look at it and you're like, oh, X, Y, or Z team, they might have a fire bullpen, but that bullpen is already trailing 6 runs every time they get out there, and their offense isn't generating anything. There's not really anybody on this list that I'd go and be like, okay, we got to dismiss it. So this is just right now the status quo is all the best teams have really elite bullpens, which is going to mean that as the season goes on, we've got to really pay close attention to what our team is doing in terms of the matchups later in the game, because that would seem to me you'd have to examine, hey, do we have the better left-handed guy? Do we have the better, 2-out ground ball, fly ball, whatever it is, X, Y, or Z thing that tickles your fancy? I think you start to then have to really sort of splice the numbers and start to kind of get crazy on some of this stuff. But let me show you where I'm at also, though, is that right now the San Diego Padres have a bunch of guys who are, as I'm pulling this up here, we'll show you where we rank in terms of this is the entire pitching staff, because obviously quality starts are in there, but you get a pretty good feel for the bullpen from this. Defensive, the airs are also for the fielders, but I think it adds context to all of it, that the bullpen has to deal with a certain amount of defensive give or take that is provided. Some of these teams have excellent elite defenses, and so it adds to it helps the bullpen out, takes a little stress off. Some of these teams are giving away bases like they are Tic Tacs. Let's talk about, though, what I really like the most in terms of when we're starting to split and parse the numbers out. 5 guys right here from the Padres all still have a 0 ERA. And I know those numbers will ultimately change. I'm not irrational in saying that, these guys are going to go wire to wire with just zeros. But I like it. So, we're not no games in anymore. We're in that sort of like, you're out of the first couple of series. You've played a day game. You've played a road game. Everybody's got a couple of innings pitched, a couple of outings. You have at least a vaguish feel for if a guy's got it right now or not. And these guys all got it. And what that means now in the here and now of what we've seen. And again, we tie this all back into the main thesis of how does this help the Padres get to and through the playoffs to a World Series championship. We initially going into the season, we're like, okay, the Dodgers are just going to win a bazillion games. And obviously we're going to fight for that wild card. But hear me out. If Giants are that good, if the Diamondbacks have a permutation or two, depending on who the starting pitcher is, that is good enough to maybe catch a Dodgers on a day off or something like that and get them for one. If the Phillies and the Mets maintain, if the NL in general ends up being more parity than believed initially, the Padres can only benefit from winning games like we saw a couple days ago with Kyle Hart going out after 2/3 of an inning, walking a ton of dudes, giving up free runs. Then the bullpen comes in and holds, and they end up getting a come-from-behind win. We've seen a couple of different games where over the course of the entire game, the Padres have utilized guys. Let's just get to some highlights. Let's just show you a little bit. But they've utilized guys to hold the game and let the offense come back and demonstrate a template right now that the Padres are not dependent solely upon, we need a great start from 3 guys, and then we need to make sure that just it's only 7, 8, 9 that are handled by the little bit of the bullpen that is available to do work. But instead, we got guys like this, like an Alec Jacob, got a righty with a sinkery sort of, downhilly vibe that it's its own little thing. It's allowed to go 82 miles an hour. It's something like that. We've got multiple lefties. This is Yuki. He is one of the guys with those 0 ERAs. We've also got Adrian Morejon. He is another lefty. So we've built up a couple of pieces. We saw an expanding of the bullpen already. They went to Logan Gillespie, who comes in, literally balks 2 runs in, and just like, whoops, we're going to put the game a little bit more deficit, but then ends up having a nice couple of innings. So I think we're seeing that, yes, Robert Suarez is an elite closer, and we like to use him whenever the situation arises, but sometimes some of these games are going to be more happenstance, patchworky, couple innings here, this guy, that guy, slot. We'll win it in the 7th when we all of a sudden, though, bought enough time for the guys to get into the other team's bullpen. And that's what we saw with the Cubs was once the starting pitching got out, the Padres were able to start scoring again on that bullpen. And I think the Padres are going to run into that in a lot of games where if the starting pitching fails, they can still win it. They just need to get to the other team's bullpen, get a couple of rounds through that starting pitcher, get those 1 or 2 innings where things explode and lock in. And the Padres winning some of those games puts them in a situation where, and I don't want to say that, oh my gosh, because the bullpen is X, Y, or Z, they're going to win the NL West. But I think you look at this and you go, it's a little bit more crowded at the top. And if the Dodgers and Giants are, like I said, if they're snipping at each other and taking some games from here and there, the Padres having an elite bullpen late into the season that is doing these kinds of numbers, I think could really be something that winds up being the difference in terms of, are the Padres fighting for the NL or the NL West or the wild card. And I think if the Padres have that bullpen, they're actually in the NL West conversation, because then you put the pressure kind of back on the Dodgers to keep performing. And the Dodgers are a team that's going to get usually everybody's best effort. So I think that this is obviously, just at its bare bones minimum, a great thing. We've got a bullpen this year. We can survive games where our starting pitching walks runs in, literally. But I think on the broader spectrum, looking long-term, instead of, and if you want to get to know these guys individually, great, have a favorite guy. Just more if you are the drive-by fan who is not able to watch every game, but is generally here for, I love the Padres and I do follow them, maybe you gamecast everything. What you got to know is that once that starting pitcher leaves, it is no longer a grin and bear it, a grip it and like that bullpen this season, regardless of who is coming out, the bullpen is going to be at the very minimum reliable. And that is a fantastic thing for the Padres. That is a fantastic thing for you Padres fans. But I want to hear, though, from you. Let me know what you think, specifics on any guys you want to talk about, big picture on what you think. Maybe the implications aren't as big. Maybe they're even bigger. Maybe the fate of humanity rests on the Padres bullpen being elite all season long. I want to hear from you guys. And like I said, at the top, if you could hit the subscribe button, that would be fantastico as well. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will talk to you guys soon.